Hello folks, welcome to this week's episode of Iron Horse Weekly. I've got a few things for you this week, looking at weathering techniques, doing up a Batman breakdown, and we're also going to take a look at the DCC Concepts IPCB Intelligent Circuit Breaker. Let's go. So this first segment is going to be taking a look at something our friends at DCC Concepts sent along for us. I mentioned to Richard that I don't actually have, for lack of a better term, a set or a proper in place DCC control system. I use a Sprog 2 and JMRI software and engine driver on a mobile phone. Now, even though that's a fantastic way of controlling your trains and programming them in DCC and things like that, my particular system doesn't actually have a proper circuit breaker in there, which isn't fantastic. And not only that, I don't even have short circuit protection. So on my layout, when a short circuit occurs, it just keeps occurring like that. So Richard suggested I try one of these. This is the IPCB Intelligent Circuit Breaker, and the emphasis is on the intelligent, and you'll see why in a minute. Now, as it comes out of the box, it's ready to use with most control systems and what have you, but it also has a great overload function. The overload protection is good because if you, like a lot of people, have very expensive models running and your loco starts drawing more power than it should for whatever reason, for example, you're bridged on a section of track on a frog and it's not fully short circuiting, but it is causing the system to draw more power than it should do, you're looking at melted plastics, damaged decoders, maybe even a fire. So less than ideal. So let's get this thing out of the box and see what we can do with it. Okay, so here is the actual unit itself. You've got the screw holes there for mounting underneath the baseboard. These little jumpers here, they can be moved up and down on these little pins here to set the ampage of your power supply. Now, as it happens, the power supply that I'm using is 1.25 amps, so I can leave that as it's set out of the box, but it goes all the way up to 5 amps. So if you're using a big gauge or like a L gauge or something like that, you can still go up and you can still use this. You've also got the option of extending the reset switch and the warning LED, which is there, so you can actually have them wired into separate functions. So you can have this tucked away under the baseboard, but you can actually have the reset and the warning buttons on your panel, and you can even use the ESP stuff, so it's all wireless. So you could in actual fact have all of your warning and reset switches on a separate control panel tucked away, so it's absolutely fantastic for that. Around this end we've got the track power out, and we've also got the trip sensitivity setting. That's just a little screwdriver head there, and essentially you want to make sure this is set so that if your track has a short circuit on it, this will kick in before the short reaches your locos and causes spikes. So out the box, again, Richard did say this is set pretty much as it should be, and you shouldn't need to tinker with that, but you can if you need to. Setting it up is pretty simple. There's no soldering required. You get a nice bag full of connector blocks here. Now, they're all pretty much the same, so it's all nice and uniform. You get 3 of them in the box, one for your track power in, one for your track power out, and it's all these little block connectors, and you just plug them in to whichever part you need to use them. So you don't actually need to be any good at soldering to get this to work, which is fantastic to me because my soldering is horrible, as you've probably all seen before. And you also get the relevant screws for fixing the unit in place underneath the board as well. As with most things from DCC Concepts, you do get quite a comprehensive colour manual there with loads of pictures and things and what have you. They've also got even more detailed instructions online. So we'll just have a quick browse through this and have a look at the actual thing we can do. Now remember I mentioned this with a smart circuit breaker, and this is what I'm talking about. You can actually configure it to work with a series of these, and you can have actually individually controlled power districts on the layout, so you can choose to power up or power down individual circuit areas at a time rather than them all coming on at once. You can even use CV settings on this thing, and you can change how long the time period is between a short circuit happening and then the unit automatically resetting itself, or if it always requires a manual reset, depending on the equipment that you're working with. It's properly configurable, and as long as you know how to change the odd CV, there's nothing in here that should really frighten you. And as I can say, it'll automatically try and reset itself up to 5 times by default, which I think you can see just there in the instructions. But again, with the CVs, you can configure that. And you can even configure the time in between the resets as well, so it's really customizable. You can use it with your point motors and all the other bits and pieces as well. So that's enough looking at instructions. Let's get it installed and see if it actually works. So we can see now this is the belly of the beast. We've got the actual main power going out to the laptop, should I say, and then you've got the power in coming in from there, going up to the wall. Then you've got these 2 crocodile clips going up to 2 screws at the bottom of the baseboard where everything's soldered to them. So I can quickly move the power from this bit here to this line here, which is isolated from the main, so I can use this as a programming track. So that's what the current setup is, but I want the main layout to be protected, so I'm going to split these wires and put the IP circuit board circuit breaker thing in between the two. Hopefully that should work. Right, so because I said this was completely, solder free and things like that, I'm going to prove it to you. So I'm just first going to strip back the wiring. That's the DCC system there. This is the in plug, and that is the track power. So I need to connect 2 wires to this and then 2 wires to the other one, plug it all together, get on the baseboard and go from there. There we go, that's the track power in, wired up. Right, that's that sorted. I just need to turn the power off for the main unit, get it plugged into the baseboard unit, give it a try. Okay. Had to do a little bit of rejigging of the system. So I'm just going to mount the IPCB on the front here. It gives me access to all the jumpers and things, and I can reset it if I need to. I've drilled 2 little pilot holes here. So I'm going to bolt that on now, screw that on even using the supply screws, plug it all in, and there we go. Okay, so here we are, it's all screwed in place. It's not the neatest, but then again, I am your less than average skilled modeller. I'm sure there are some heroes out there that will tell me I've done it all wrong. That's absolutely fine. We are not all at that skill level, and that's not what we're about here. But I will just show you how I've done this, guys. This plug here connects from the sprog, so this might be your NC power carb or whatever, to there, and then this bit here comes out to your track power, which is connected to the 2 feeds under there. Now again, express the reason why they're on crocodile clips is because I can move them to the programming track with ease. I know it's not professional or whatever, but there we are, it works. Well, I think it does anyway. The next test is to power it up and see if it all goes bang or not. Okie dokie, I've now got my new locomotive, a KR Models GT3, on the layout. No power to anything yet, as you can see there. Solo on engine driver turned off. Let's see what happens when I hit the power. Okay, so we've got a power button there, which is good. Let's see if the loco powers up okay. That's nice. Hey, success! Let's see what happens if we get a short circuit, shall we? Oh, this is a really stupid idea, so don't do this at home. Haha, it worked. It's cut the power and it's reset it. Now, if I keep the short circuit on there, yeah, see, it's keeping power, it's checking. Yeah, see, that's really clever. That's brilliant. See, it detects the short still there and turns straight off. That's amazing. And the loco still works. Brilliant. I call that a success, gentlemen and ladies. Well, that seems to have worked out really nicely. It was my first time doing anything like that. I've never really bothered with the, for lack of a better word, the technical side of DCC. For me, it was always just about having pretty sounds and having a way to control my locomotives all at one time without having to have power districts and isolate sections and all the fun of the fairground you get with regular DC. Also smooth acceleration and stay alive too. So the clever side of it like this never really crossed my mind, but if you think about it, it should have done, because if you get even 4 modern sound fitted locomotives, let's face it, you are looking at around about £1,000 mark, aren't you? That's the reality of it, and it doesn't take much for those locos of yours to go and fry themselves. So I feel a little bit better now. I've got this good piece of kit installed on my layout, knowing that my locos have got a really good safety net installed, and should anything go wrong, I know that I'm not going to have to replace them all again or risk a fire, which is fantastic. So you can check out the links in the description if you want to go and buy one of these. As I said, DCC Concepts did send me this. I didn't pay for it, so it is a review sample, but that said, I've not been held at gunpoint. You must review this, you must make it good. Now, this is my own opinion of this thing, and I think it works. Otherwise, it wouldn't be on the layout, would it, really? But I've always used DCC Concept stuff. Their remarkable quality speaks for itself, really. Is it the cheapest stuff on the market? No, but then again, do you really want cheap when you've gone and got yourself a really expensive, high quality model railway? We covered that a few videos ago, didn't we? About cheaping out when you shouldn't be cheaping out. And this is exactly one of those times when you shouldn't be cheaping out. So there we are. Links in the description, guys. Go check it out. Cheers. Now then, a couple of weeks ago I showed you what I got for Christmas, and one of those items was a Bachmann brake van. It's a really nice little bit of kit, really well detailed for what it cost me. Yes, the rails are moulded detail there, but you've got all the brake stuff inside there, so it's enough really. A few things bother me with wagons like this. It's that the wood doesn't look like wood, it just looks like plastic panelling. So I think we should try and address that as best we can. Let's take this little baby over to the modelling table and see what we can do. Here we are on the modelling table. We should have everything we need to get this going. I'm going to film the whole process in one shot, edit out the boring bits, and then do voiceovers for the rest of it. Okay, let's begin. First things is first, we need to get a nice even surface for our powders and paints and pigments to work with, so it's just a good coating of the old high coat matte lacquer to start with, getting all over the roof there, in the bottom side, the rails on the front and back too. Next I'm just going to mix up some acrylic paints to make a panel fade, if you will. Obviously these wagons out in traffic every single day, they get knocked and banged about, and all the wood panels wouldn't all be in the same colour, so to represent that I'm just going to take some grey and a little bit of brown, mix them together, try and get a few slight variations of the panel, just to add a little bit more visual interest to the piece. Applying it, make sure your lacquer is dry first, but it's just a matter of getting a nice thin brush and gently applying it. Make sure your paint is thinned, otherwise it's just going to streak and look awful and you'll see brush marks in there. Try your best to seemingly pick out a random panel at a time. Now, trying to false randomosity, if that's even a word, randomness is, you're never going to get to do it completely because your brain doesn't work like that. You will always try and make a pattern of some kind, so just try your best. And if you do get the odd bit of paint on the opposing panel or the opposite panel next to the one you're working on, it's not the end of the world. You can just take that off with a little bit of soapy water on a cotton bud there, or even on a dry brush that's free of paint but with a little bit of water on it, and that'll help shift it away nicely. So we're going to do this to all sides of the wagons and then we'll move on to the next step. Next up for this wagon, I'm actually going to apply an enamel wash from Humbrol. This is just their black wash. It works really well, and what you can do is just blather it on there, and if you get too much of the wash in any one area, just clean your brush off. Then just simply touch it to the excess fluid and the brush will pull it out of the way without leaving any sort of streaks or dirty marks. Finish applying the wash to the rest of the model. Try and make the ends a bit darker than the sides. They always tend to get pretty mucked up. Washes are a nice quick way of just pooling any pigment, if you will, around detail. It just helps it stand out that bit better and help it look that little bit more grimy. Now, of course, the downside to using a wash is it is going to take a bit of time for it to dry. You can use this time to just gently look at the model, plan out your next steps, look at where you want to apply your pigments, and try and make a bit of a plan for where you want to go with the piece itself. We're just going to start by adding a little bit of smoke, a Humbrol weathering powder to the underside of the roof there, on the body side of the panels there, just to start adding some detail, and we can come and take that a bit later on with our bits and pieces too. Let's not forget the top of the roof there as well. While the sides are still fully drying, we can actually apply the wash to the roof, and actually while the roof is still damp with the enamel wash, we can actually start pushing some powders into the roof to start giving us that warm, faded, patchy texture you get, and then we can again further build on that as we go along. And for the roof, we're going to use a mixture of techniques of dry blending off the piece, and also dry blending and wet blending on the model as well. As you can see there, we're going to try and blend the 2-3 different shades of grey together, working with the texture already on the roof. We can then start to blend in the darker powders, the black for the soot around the chimney, and then we can look at moving on to powders that represent sort of rust. And this next bit's really important. For applying the rust, we're going to want a bit of texture, so we're going to need to use the lacquer to wet the area around the chimney, and then we're going to actually push the powders into the wet lacquer, and then we can also push some of the more rusty tones into that black powder, which will give us a really nice dark, rusty, dirty look. And it all looks really well once you've done the basic bits and pieces here. Take a clean, fluffy makeup brush and then blend it all across the roof, and the effect is much nicer. Then you might want to take your smallest, thinnest, pointiest, softest brush and dampen it with a little bit of either thinners or soapy water, and then just try and make nice straight streak lines in the powder. The powder and the water will react, and it'll give you a really, really nice little streaking effect. And when the water dries, it becomes much more subtle, so don't worry if it looks quite stark and contrasted and jarring at this point. Once everything blends back in again when it dries, it does look much more subtle. Once all the roof's dry, we can then turn our attention to the sides and the ends of the model as well. We're going to apply rust to these metal panels at the bottom of the brake van there, and we're going to layer that again with some darker powders on top of that, And then we're actually going to apply that same streaking technique to the sides as we did to the roof, and it's going to give us a nice subtle washed, rainy, streaky look again. And it's all going to build on that final finished look that we're after. That really hard worked, in service, abused, battered brake van. And again, just applying dry powder to the side of a dry piece, and then we're going to use that wet streaking technique on the sides of the wood panels there. We are going to take most of this back off because we want to see the natural difference in shades for the panels that we painted earlier in the process. We want those to come through still. We don't want to completely ignore them. And we're also going to just touch up any areas that we think we could do with improving. Maybe we're going to want to add more to one area or less to another. This is the time to do it. And then one of the final steps is we're just going to take our DCC Concepts dark rust and then just apply it to the underframe there, to the underside of the body, the wheels. This is a really nice, dirty, grimy colour. Even though it's called dark rust, it can be used to represent track grime and dirt just absolutely fine. And I have to say it's probably one of my favourite, if not my most favourite powders, because it always gives a really nice look. And you might need to think about changing the style of brush you have just to get into the nooks and crannies there. But once you've managed all that, it's time to give it a nice clear coat of the matte lacquer, let it dry, and then we can pop it on the layout and see how it looks. Right folks, that's it for this week's episode of Iron Horse Weekly. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Let me know what you thought down in the comments below. Really glad to have the IPCB on the layout now. It's good to know I've got that security so my locos ain't going to go bang. It was something I've overlooked for quite a while. Bit silly really when you consider the sheer cost of these things. So really happy. Big thanks to Richard at DCC Concepts for sending that through for me. Cheers very much, really appreciate it. As for the weathering, hope you enjoyed it. Do you want to see more? Now, I do offer weathering commissions to folks out there. I've done quite a few actually, for subscribers and customers, and I've even done a bit for DCC Concepts as well. So if that's something you want me to take care of for you, let me know. Details of which are in the description box. Or if you want to have a go at weathering something yourself, which is something everyone should have to do at least once. I think you should have a go at least once. But if you've not got the time, give me a shout. I'm happy to do it for you. And until next time folks, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, share and subscribe. And I'll see you all then. Bye bye.